Yes, Coast Guard, Charlie 6 Kilo Alpha 3. I have an update report on our message of an hour ago. I can confirm that the vessel is aground and the draft has been reduced by approximately 1 meter, so we are 1 meter aground forward. And at the moment we have lost approximately 120 cubic meters of fuel oil.
Who the hell is calling at this unearthly hour? Hello? Hello, this is John Tatas. What are you saying? When did this happen? Is anyone hurt? Well, thank God there's no injuries. What's the damage to the ship? She's hard aground, you say. And the bunker tank seems to have been ruptured. Gosh, that oil spill really worries me, especially in the States. It could get very nasty. What else can you tell me at this stage? Whose fault was it? Well, anyway, do everything you can to stop the leak and secure the ship. I'll call the club right away and see what they have to say. Until I've spoken to them, say as little as possible about this to anyone, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this event on behalf of BIMCO. What we're presenting to you today falls basically into two parts. In the morning, we will be going through an interactive casualty incident, which will involve video interviews with P&I clubs, lawyers, classification societies, and underwriters. And in addition, live discussion on stage with John Satsis representing owners, Han van Blanken representing charterers, and Julian Bray representing the press. This is intended to show how owners and charterers need to react to a major marine incident. What you've just heard is the beginning of what we hope is a realistic account of a marine casualty. If you don't like the story or think it's no good, then you can blame me because I wrote it. My name is Lindsay East. Some of you know me quite well. I've been around as a shipping lawyer for a long time. I'm your host for the day, if that's the right way of putting it. Sounds a bit like a chat show, but anyway. I will be popping in and off, on and off the stage during the course of the morning. We're going to hope to finish the morning session about 12:30, and there'll be an opportunity for everyone to ask questions as we go along. You will all, I hope, have been given interactive handheld voting machines, which will allow you to participate in the questions we're going to ask you. This all sounds a bit like a reality TV show, but we hope this will work, and we're going to ask you a test question to see if you can operate your machines. So far so good. Choose your response. Press the relevant button when you get to the question, and then you can change your answer if you want to. So it's relatively simple. So here's your question. How would you describe your involvement in the shipping industry? 1, ship owning. 2, chartering. 3, lawyer. 4, other. And if you'll be good enough to vote now, we'll see what answer we get. I'm sorry if the noise is, I'm not responsible for this. Well, you see a big majority in favour of other. Anyway, it shows how it works, and unfortunately there are very few charterers, but never mind. Now, you'll also have been given a bundle of documents which look quite formidable, but I hope you'll have been able to look at these because they explain the factual background to the whole incident. And as I said, I will be introducing elements from that as we go through the morning's performance. Those of you who are classically inclined can perhaps look at me as possibly the Greek chorus coming on from time to time. Anyway, in the afternoon, the bundle that you have will form the basis for a mock arbitration. This is why we've called this event Double Jeopardy, trial by media, trial by law. In the morning, you'll hear a lot about how to deal with a casualty of this type, and particularly the effect of the media nowadays on this type of casualty. In the afternoon, there will be an arbitration to look at the legal aspects of the case. We'll have two barristers, Chirag Karia on behalf of the owners and Neville Phillips on behalf of the charterers. Witnesses will be cross-examined, Mr. Satsas and Mr. Van Blanken, and the panel of arbitrators represent the three jurisdictions set out in the standard BIMCO contracts. So you will have Robert Shaw from New York, Jude Benny from Singapore, and the chairman, Bruce Buchan, from London. So just very briefly, I want to describe the background to the incident. We set this incident in June 2010 with a charter party between the owners, Minimus Marine, small ship-owning company managed in Greece, with London agents, which is an important distinction, represented by Mr. Satsas. The vessel is time-chartered for a trip to Magna Charterer SA, based in Luxembourg, who are the transport arm of a very large and very well-known multinational company with offices all over the country, all over the world, I should say, including in the USA. The vessel is ordered to carry a cargo of sugar to a discharge port up a river on the west coast of the USA. The cargo is owned by Magna Charterer, and they have a sale contract with prompt discharge dates for discharge in the west coast of the USA. These points will become relevant, as you will see. The vessel proceeds to the mouth of the river, waits off the entrance, while there is a discussion, which you'll hear more about, as to whether it is safe for the vessel to proceed up the river or not. You will see from the documents you have, and you'll hear about this, there are discussions between the owners and charterers, and discussions between the owners, the master, and the port authority. The problem is that the river is dangerous in the sense that it is liable to flood, has a very strong current, and has a problem with shifting sandbanks. This is perhaps familiar to some of you. Ultimately, the master is ordered to go upriver by charterers, having got the approval of the port authority, and as you heard, she then runs aground. She ruptures a fuel oil tank, and substantial pollution is bound to take place. There could be better places to do this than the west coast of the USA, as I think you'll all understand. You'll also hear that there are particular environmental difficulties, as this river empties into a wide bay where there are shrimp fisheries and an endangered species of bird called the marbled murrelet. Now, you probably think I made that up, but it actually is a real bird, and I had a real case where these birds were damaged by pollution, and the element of the claim against my clients in relation to this pollution, only in relation to the marbled murrelet, was $26 million. So these matters are of considerable importance. Anyway, the vessel's come into contact with an underwater obstruction, and this is what you've just been hearing. So what do we do now? What do the parties do? Well, the first thing that Mr. Satsas will have to do, as the owner's representative, is to speak to his club and ask for their advice and support. He will also need to speak to his lawyers, and the same applies to Mr. Van Blanken, club and lawyers. However, Mr. Satsas and Mr. Van Blanken are old acquaintances. Accordingly, the first thing is for Mr. Satsas to ring Mr. Van Blanken and explain the situation. However, before that happens, I've been asked to ask you to vote on the first question, which is perhaps a little early, but never mind. Would you have allowed a ship of yours to proceed upriver in these circumstances? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Isn't technology wonderful? Almost a dead heat. Well, that's quite interesting. And we're going to ask this question again later, so it'll be interesting to see whether people change their mind. In any event, what we now have, Mr. Satsas needs to speak to Mr. Van Blanken.
Yes.
Han, this is John Satsas, Minimus Marine.
John?
I have some bad news. Concerns the Idle Star. It's sketchy at the moment, but the long and the short of it is that the ship has hit something in the river on her way up to the anchorage towards the discharging terminal. It seems that whatever it was has punctured one of the bunker tanks and she's leaking oil into the river. I don't know much more than that at the moment, but I'll keep you posted. Right now, I'm trying to get onto the club and see what they have to advise.
John, my God, that's bad news. Is she aground? And when did it happen? And did I do something to stop the oil spill?
And I've just heard all about it. They called me a few minutes ago. Yes, the ship is hard aground. It's all unclear at the moment as to the containment of the oil spillage. As I say, I'm about to call my club, and I think you'd better do the same thing with your club.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the information, John. I'll do that right away. I'll get on with it. Thank you very much. Speak to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Well, contact established between owners and charterers, and as Mr. Satz has said, the first thing to do is to contact the P&I Club. This is done by way of video, which you will see, so nobody live, so to speak. So first we're going to see Mr. Satzer speaking with his club, and then Mr. Van Blanken speaking with his club.
Yeah, hello, Mike. This is John Satsas from Minimus Marine. I'm really very sorry to disturb you so early in the morning, but one of our ships has been involved in an accident in the River on the US West Coast, and I fear there's also a pollution incident involved.
Gosh, John, not great news. Let me collect my thoughts a bit. There's a number of things running through my mind. Going to need a lot more information, John, but I'll try and start from the top. First of all, John, do you know, has the captain reported this to you?
The captain phoned me just a few minutes ago, but the details I have are very sketchy.
Okay. John, do you know if the ship's secure or whether she's drifting or hard aground?
I'm afraid I don't have that information yet.
Okay, I just need that information as to whether, for example, she is in a salvage situation and whether there's a local salvor who may be coming along to give the master assistance.
Okay, I'll get that information as soon as I can. Is there anything else I need to do at this stage?
There's a lot more, John. I'm going to focus on the pollution elements now, Ben. I'm assuming it's bunker fuel.
Correct. We think it's fuel oil, a tear in the bunker tank.
Has the master secured the leak to your knowledge, John?
I believe they're working on it. I'm not sure what the status is at this stage.
Okay, well, the message to get to the master is a strong one, that as soon as the ship is secured, that the amount of fuel oil that has been lost is accurately quantified.
Okay, I'll make sure the master knows.
The next thing, John, is local assistance. The captain's reported it to you. To your knowledge, has he reported it to anyone else? For example, the club's commercial or legal correspondence?
As far as I know, Mike, he's done all he can at this stage. He's spoken to the local authorities to make them aware that there's been a grounding in the river, but beyond that, I don't know who else he's spoken to so far.
Well, thankfully he's done that, because he should have done that within the first hour. That's good news. Well, I'll take it upon myself to get hold of our lawyers along the river to make sure that they know that they're going to be in charge of the local response to the incident.
Yeah, that's fine, Mike. Is there any other information you need from me at this stage?
Yes, there will be. In relation to the incident and the river, has the master conveyed to you the speed of the river?
Yes, I understand from the master that it's a fairly fast-flowing river, around 6 knots, I believe. It's unclear.
So depending on the amount of fuel oil that we've lost, it could be a significant pollution event, and there could be significant third-party damages to both properties ashore, obviously fish and bird life. So we may have a lot of third-party claims.
I hope not. You're really depressing me.
Well, I'm afraid I'll have to think ahead for you, John. That's part of our job. Next thing, this is newsworthy. Oil in the water. Did you ever take my advice and get that media consultant sorted out?
No, we never thought we'd really need one.
Oh dear. Well, we're going to have to come back to that, but that's a big gap because someone's going to want to speak to you from Twitter feeds, Facebook, the lot, and they're going to be looking for the company, and if we haven't got a media spokesman, that's going to cause us some issues down the line.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. I think both you and I have quite a few more phone calls to make.
Yeah. Last thing, John, obviously you've got a long-standing relationship with BIMCO, and you're going to want to appoint them in relation to charter party aspects to the extent that there's an issue in relation to the safety of the place to which you've been sent upriver. So if you haven't appointed or phoned INS, then I will take it upon myself to retain them on your behalf.
Okay, that's fine. Would you phone INS for me, please, then?
Okay, we will do that. Now, because the incident has taken place in the United States, John, we're going to have a whole raft of additional people that will have to help us to oversee everything. I think you're going to have to take it from me that I need your general authority to appoint a supervisory pollution council and other specialist counsel to look after things such as third-party claims. I'll retain our river lawyers, John, and make sure they get in touch with the captain, confirm their attendance on your behalf. There's going to be a lot of authorities very interested in this matter, interested in the captain and the chief engineer. And whilst we'll try and get our legal representatives there as quickly as we can to assist the master and hold his hand, chances are that the authorities and the Coast Guard are going to get there first and are going to try and take some statements from the captain without anyone in attendance. So he's just got to be aware that that's likely to happen. But I'll make the call and get our people there as soon as we possibly can. Okay?
Okay, I'll make sure the master knows to expect possible difficult questions.
That's another thing we're going to have to perfect as the day goes on. But I think that's plenty for the moment. I'll make the other calls I've promised to make to you, and we'll speak again, no doubt, very soon. Okay, John?
Okay, thanks very much, Mike.
Bye for now.
Hello, this is Han van Blanken of Magna. We have an issue with a vessel that we have on charter, and I'm ringing you for some help.
So what's happening?
Yeah, the ship is the Idle Star. We have her on charter from Minimus Marine, and she's involved in an incident on the river.
So the vessel's in the States?
Yes.
Okay, and she's had a casualty?
Yes.
Is there pollution? Yeah, okay. And what about injuries? No, that looks like not a problem at the moment. Good. And cargo is on board? She was discharging or about to? Okay, but no damages yet to that. Okay. So let's think how you're potentially going to be involved. You're the time charterers of the vessel, are you? Okay. Yep. And do you have an unsafe berth or port warranty in the charter? You do, okay. What I will need, it sounds like potentially a pretty serious casualty, so we'll need solicitors instructed quickly. Do you have anyone in particular in mind? Holman Fenwick? Okay, that's fine with us, as long as they're not instructed by the owners. Okay, I'll get on to them now. Obviously it's very early in the morning, but we need to act quickly. I'll phone Holman's. They've got a casualty line, telephone line. We will need copies of the charter party and any voyage instructions you've been given, correspondence with the port, with the owners, with the agents. Bear in mind you're a big US player, and it's going to be potentially a high-profile casualty here, whereas the public may not know the owner. So I would recommend that, have you got a media company in your casualty response plan? You don't? Okay, well I will, when I get into the office, I will look some up and make a recommendation. They need to be on pretty fast, and they may ask you, just to be warned, to appear on the television to appease the local residents. That will help in the claims handling as well. Okay, I assume you have no objection. It probably won't be covered de facto by the club cover, but it is something we recommend, and we can look at the end of the day. The board can look at it if necessary. Okay, so the next steps, I'll get on to Holman's, as I say. If you could forward to us and to Holman's, I'll let you know the direct email address, the charter party, the bill of lading for any cargo, and any correspondence about the voyage and voyage instructions. That would be really helpful. Is there actually a charter party drawn up, or are we just still on a recap? Okay, there is a charter. Was there a recap as well? Okay. I think if we can have as much as possible, that would be really helpful, and then we can weed out, if necessary, what's not important. Okay, so that's the action plan. I'll get on to Holman's. I'll advise you about the media company. There may, I don't know how long the casualty will take, how long it'll take till the ship's the cargo's discharged. There may be security requests, so I'll have to check. I think that's about it for the moment. Obviously, you've got my number. Okay, I'll speak to you in about 3 hours when I get back to the office, and we'll speak later. Okay.
Well, the owners and the charterers have both spoken to their club. Perhaps the advice given you would think is not particularly surprising. Very concerned about pollution risks, very concerned about the media interest, worried about the factual background, securing the vessel, quantifying the loss of fuel oil, and getting local assistance, both legal and pollution, and possibly even salvage, as soon as possible. And obviously, looking at the facts and making sure the master, if possible, is, as it were, cut off from being interviewed is rather important. Mentioned there the high profile of the charterers, who are, as I said, a large multinational, so they have American interests, so there'll be more media interest from that point of view, and even the dreaded reference to club cover. In any event, the club are now doing what they're supposed to do, ringing up the two firms of lawyers in respect of owners and charterers. But the next thing you will see is the owners and the charterers talking with their respective lawyers.
Oh, hello. Is that BIMCO? Could you put me through to Ian Chetwood, please? Oh, morning, Ian. Sorry to wake you at this unearthly hour. The club said that they had spoken to you already and filled you in.
As you know, with pollution cases, I fear that things are going to get worse for you rather than better in the short term. But the club are looking at local lawyers to help deal with the criminal and civil liabilities in the US, and to stand up to the authorities, because the crew are going to be under quite a lot of pressure quite quickly.
So what are my priorities at the moment?
Well, I think first you're going to have to deal with the salvage, and that involves choosing the right salvage contractor and choosing the right contract for them. That's the first thing, and then the second thing I think is getting control of the facts, John. If you don't have control of the facts, then you won't have control of the situation. One of our master mariners happens to be in the States. He's on his way now to your ship, and I've briefed him. Well, we're going to brief him now, actually, to help go alongside and talk to the crew about what's been going on. Things are going to play out on a couple of fronts now. There's a question of, I think, protecting your reputation and then protecting you legally. Okay, John, one thing, getting control of the facts. Is there a VDR recorder on board?
Yes, indeed. That all has been sorted.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we can get an AIS overview, which can show the movements of the ship, but none of that VDR, AIS, none of that is really a substitute for getting close to the master and making sure that he is protected, that he's got assistance, and that we get to the bottom of what's going on here. I think you should tell the crew and the master not to sign any documents about the cause of the accident and not to give any statements about the cause of the accident until our master mariner gets there.
What about the pollution?
Okay, well, that's going to be a local matter, and the US Coast Guard is going to have its oil spill response teams put into action. I think they're going to look to you to pay the cleanup costs. In the States, there's usually strict liability for cleanup costs, and there's nothing you can do about that. However, what I think is really, really important is for you to have top-class media assistance. You are going to be at the centre of a media storm here, and you need top-class help.
Do you plan to be coming to the US?
In the first instance, no. I think that as a partner in the firm, I think what I should do is provide you with a strategic overview. To do that, I'm going to need to have a bit of distance. So certainly until such time as our master mariner reports back on the facts, you'll need somebody who is available to you to make strategic decisions with you, and also to answer your questions and those from the club.
I think that's a very good idea. When can you get here?
I'm leaving now.
Hello, Mr. Brown. Thank you for calling. Yes, I expected your call actually, because I agreed with the club that we would retain your services for this incident. So thank you for calling.
Thank you for confirming those instructions. I've already carried out a conflict check, and I'm pleased to say that we're free to act. I've had some outline details in an email I received this afternoon, and it certainly sounds a serious casualty. But could you tell me a little bit more about the incident?
Yes, although I must say that we don't have much details at the moment, other than that the ship is heavily aground. There's no water ingress into the cargo holds, as far as I understand, but one of the fuel tanks is leaking heavy fuel oil into the river, and that's a bit of an issue. Furthermore, we understand that the master has agreed for a contract with the local salvors, and I also can advise you that we have a contingency plan in place being operated by our superintendents. And as we speak, we have made arrangements for our senior superintendent to travel to the place of the incident.
Can I check whether you've got full charterer's P&I cover, and if so, whether the club has appointed local correspondents and also a local surveyor?
Yes, that's correct. I can confirm that. We have a full cover, and the club has appointed the local correspondent and local surveyors already, so I will give you all the details.
Now, regarding the cargo, who currently owns it, and do you have any insurance cover in place?
We do own the cargo at the moment. The cargo was shipped from Thailand. There were clean bills of lading issued by the local agent on our behalf, on the owner's behalf, on a congen form. It was expressly incorporated in the terms of the New York Produce 93 Time Charter Party, and the cargo has been sold to the United States, some receivers there on CIF terms and conditions. But the bills of lading have not yet been negotiated, and thus we retain title of the cargo at this moment. The insurance is an all-risk cargo policy, and it was placed by our brokers in the London market.
If you've not already done so, I strongly recommend that you notify your underwriters through your brokers of the incident, although at the moment there may be no physical damage to the cargo. As this case develops, I can see that there may well be claims for salvage and possibly general average in the future. On a slightly different matter, I understand that although you're a European-based organisation, you currently have, or have had, I believe, a representative office in New York for about the last 10 years. If the pollution turns out to be as bad as we fear, it may be that you may be dragged into US proceedings, and since we've checked that the vessel is actually managed by a Greek entity and is owned by a Liberian one-ship company, we strongly recommend that you should start taking some defensive measures in the United States.
Yes, we have already instructed our New York office to retain the usual firm that we're using there, and obviously we will ask them to liaise with you, but we will certainly also look into the media issues.
Yes, we look forward to discussing that further with both them and the club. In the meantime, I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about the charter party.
The charter party, well, in fact, the vessel was chartered by us from Minimus Marine on an amended New York Produce 93 form. The period was 12 months, via safe ports, always afloat within IWL. But there are also a number of other provisions relating to the safe ports, and I think it's better to send you a copy of the charter party as soon as possible.
Yes, could you please do that, and could you please also forward to us any recaps leading up to the fixture, and also any correspondence that you've had with the owners in relation to the subject voyage, so that we can look at this in some detail. Right, I think this is probably as far as we can go at the moment, but what I would like to do is, please, is to set up a conference call which will link up all the parties. This will be in accordance with your contingency plan, whereby we link up at, I would say, 1600 GMT every day, which will be the same as 0800 Pacific time in the United States. This will then link in with both yourself, with the club, with the local correspondents, and those on the spot in the river.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I will set up a conference call with the facilities, and I will send you all the relevant details.
That's great, Han. Many thanks, and I look forward to receiving those. Bye.
Well, there you heard owners and charterers speaking to their lawyers. Again, perhaps nothing surprising said there. A lot of emphasis on local lawyers, sorting out the facts as soon as possible. Strict liability was mentioned as oil pollution in the United States, which is obviously a concern. Talking about the contractual charter party and cargo situation is obviously rather important. I should have mentioned, of course, the charter is subject to English law, and from what you just heard, it seems the bills of lading will be too. Also, an issue which came up at the end there, which is that if the ship owner is a small owner and appears to have no funds, being a Liberian company, then of course a lot more emphasis will be placed on the large multinational charterer who has assets all over the place and is obviously seen to have what you might call deep pockets. So that's going to be an issue for the charterer as well as for the owner. Now, we're going to ask you another question now, hopefully, which should come up on the screen, which is, would you support a master who refused to take a ship to a discharge area in this sort of situation? Now, you can have three choices here, yes, no, or don't know. So perhaps you'd be good enough to vote. See what you come up with. Well, that's a pretty substantial majority in favour of the master. That's rather impressive, actually. Right, well, thank you very much. Now, the owners have other things to do now. They've spoken to their lawyers, they've spoken to the club. So now they must speak to other people who are obviously going to be very much involved with this type of casualty, starting with the Classification Society.
Good morning, Lloyd's Register, Spiros Anastasovitis speaking. How can I help?
Oh, hello, Mr. Anastasovitis. This is John Tsatsas calling from Minimus Marine in connection with a grounding incident involving one of our vessels in the river. My understanding is that you have details of the incident in an email.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Tsatsas. Yes, indeed, we received your email. I understand the vessel suffered a grounding. Can you please tell me the actual condition now?
There has been some damage to the underwater parts. We suspect that there is a ruptured bunker tank because there has been pollution in the adjacent area. We don't know of other details involved.
Has any other preliminary inspection carried out so far?
soundings have been taken by the crew, and there doesn't appear to be any indication of ingress of water.
Okay, I see. By the chief engineer, is the rudder and the propulsion system operational?
No damage as far as is visible.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have any repair plan in mind?
There is no intent to carry out permanent repairs in the United States, so we're looking at a temporary repair.
Okay, then first thing comes first of all, we have to ascertain the full extent of the damage. That means you need to arrange through your local agents, diving company, so that we see the underwater parts of the hull clean.
Right. In the meantime, can the vessel proceed directly to discharge?
This we shall have to see depending on the extent of the damage.
If the temporary repairs entail going into dry dock, would this be credited against her dry docking survey?
Yes, at the request of the owners, of course, we can credit this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We shall arrange for the surveyor then. Thank you.
So, who else do owners need to talk to? Obviously, they need to talk to the hull and machinery underwriter, usually via their broker, so that's the next conversation.
Hello, Paul. You're aware of what has happened with our ship, and it's likely that the situation is going to get worse before it gets any better, and we're anxious for you to be involved so that everything is done by the book.
Thanks, John. We've heard from your insurance broker. He's made me aware. Thankfully, the crew are all safe. We'll be here to help you out however possible. A local casualty surveyor has been lined up. He'll be getting in touch with your local agent shortly to attend on board and inspect the damages. If you could let us know as well what is happening with regard to the salvage.
Well, at the moment we have basic details only. As far as we know, the ship is still aground. We have a ruptured fuel oil tank and oil is spilling into the river. And it's uncertain how we're going to refloat the vessel. I presume that tugs will be involved, but at this stage I'm unable to give you too much background on that.
Good. No, John, I'm sure you've triggered your vessel response plan now. Once this matter has calmed down, we'd appreciate hearing further about what's going to happen with regard to your repairs.
There is another issue we need to address, and that's general average, because the vessel, as you know, has cargo on board, and we're likely to have issues being raised by the cargo interests.
No, well, John, if you can get a GA adjuster lined up, I think that would be a prudent step. You're going to have cargo coming to you about this loss, and there are going to be some implications with regard to P&I insurance on this and who will respond for their element of the shortfall claim.
Okay. Before we wind this up, is there any paperwork that needs to be done? Anything we have to do on our side?
As I say, any assistance on account payments or anything else just to speed up and assist you, we're here to help.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. That's most encouraging for us.
Well, there was the hull and machinery underwriter. I'm sure it's nice to hear that an insurer is here to help. So the owners have now spoken to their club, to their lawyers, to the classification society, and to their hull and machinery underwriters. So we're moving on a couple of days now. Assume that what's happening in America is that efforts are being made to make sure the ship is secure. Lawyers have been instructed to fly out there. You have surveyors, etc., etc. And what we need to do now, a few days later, is to have the owners and the charterers speaking to their clubs again to review what has been happening and progress.
Oh, good morning, Mike. It's John here again.
John.
Mike, hopefully you've seen my email where I'm confirming that I collated all the information you asked me to gather and spoke to all the people that you requested that I contact. So everything seems to be underway as we discussed. The main thing is that the ship is now absolutely secure. Having said that, the bad news is that there seems to have been quite a large spill of oil. The pollution has been carried downstream towards the mouth of the river, and there seems to be fairly extensive pollution affecting local shrimp fishermen, fish farms, beaches, local amenities, and other similar things. So it looks as if the situation is far more serious than we originally anticipated.
Yeah, we did anticipate that in the call we made last night, and right, we're going to have to deal with it. Since I spoke with you, I did retain our local lawyers, and I did retain coordinating counsel. With coordinating counsel, a number of issues are going to arise straight away. Firstly, our maritime counsel will continue with the liaison with the captain. We'll assist him with regards to interviews with the US Coast Guard and liaison with what is likely to be a unified command centre that the Coast Guard will set up to respond to the spill, at which we will need to have a seat. Now, the Maritime Council will do the evidence collection and retention in the normal way of a marine investigation, Admiralty investigation, but the Coordinating Council will take charge of the link with the Unified Command to continue the investigation into this marine casualty. Now, in relation to the spill response, Coordinating Council and I have spoken. We will retain a firm called Entrix. Now, Entrix in the United States are well-known expert surveyors with huge rafts of experience in relation to how to conduct pollution damage control response, and also how to conduct surveys with the creation of things called SCAT teams. Teams of people that scour the alleged damages area to collect samples of the oil to prove that it's from our ship, because there'll be a lot of invalid claims coming our way, and also to assist in what could come our way, which is the involvement of the Department of Interior, the Department of the United States Environmental Agency, and if it gets out to sea, the National Oceanic Administration. So we need to prepare for that, and the best way to do that is to get the science on board. Now, in relation to oil pollution, there's no one best worldwide than ITOPF. The club will be retaining ITOPF and putting them on the first available plane out to the west coast of the United States to work with Entrix and Coordinating Council. We're also going to have to start to set up some third-party claims handling. You mentioned already damages down the river. It could be property damage, could be marinas, it could be beaches. The club's going to have to consider whether in due course it needs to set an office up there, or whether we do that through our local lawyers, or perhaps some third-party correspondence. Now, that's quite important, because through that vehicle we will deal with some of the communications. The absence of a media consultant and the regular newsworthy output from the owners is going to damage us. So we're going to have to try and mitigate that on your behalf as best we can through the team you've already got. And that is going to mean, for example, thinking a strategy through about liaison with local townsfolk, village folk who are affected, and giving them information on a regular basis. Meetings, for example. Absent a media consultant, I'm afraid it's going to cause us additional problems. Now, in relation to the civil investigation, you've notified Hull and Class. To the extent that it's necessary, the statements that will eventually be taken by the local US Council can be evaluated by INS, and we can talk about what INS want to do in relation to the evidence themselves, what focus they've got, for example, on an unsafe port in investigation, as to whether, you know, the US Council are actually examining the matter in the way that INS would like. The last thing we do in incidents like this is have regular updates, and we patch in all the key players into a daily conference call. And I think, given this instance, it's probably quite a good idea that it's at the end of today, the first one. So please be available from, say, 5-ish, at about the opening of business hours in the United States. We'll have the conference chaired by the US Coordinating Council with all the lawyers involved, representatives of Entrix we mentioned, and we will convey daily themes of things that we will be doing to keep everybody appraised of developments and how best the whole team should work together to liaise with both the authorities and ultimately third-party damaged, affected people and the authorities. Okay?
I appreciate your help. Bye for now.
Hello, Nicola. This is Han van Blanken again.
Han, hello. How are you? I can see you've been deluged with requests for information and emails, etc., from Holmans and others. One thing I do want to discuss with you, if I may, the next hire instalment falls due tomorrow. You'll have seen Holman's draft message to owners placing the vessel off hire. I just wanted to know whether you had any queries or concerns about it. No? Yes, I understand the tone is quite brusque or blunt, but it is important to keep the legal issues clear. Okay, I'll make a few amendments and I'll pass them to you. I've got no particular comment to make in addition to what's been said. And we'll be in touch again later on this afternoon. Yep, okay, thanks, bye.
Well, you'll see that things are moving on. Problems are getting more and more. The club is very worried about local claims for obvious reasons. They're very concerned about the media, lack of media consultant, great deal of press publicity. And as has already been mentioned by the club, where there's an incident like this, you have to assume this is a river that empties into a very large bay, where you have shrimp fisheries, you have restaurateurs, hotels, etc., and these will be very badly affected by such an incident. And the effects are both actual and, of course, potential.
Soren, I'm out for lunch at the RAC. Would you take my calls, please, for me? Thank you.
I'm an environmentalist, and I have come all the way from the United States. Your ship has destroyed the wildlife and the ecosystem in the river. You have destroyed the livelihood of our fishermen, and we will make you pay dearly.
Yeah, and what about the hotels and restaurants? People won't come to our beautiful area anymore. We'll go out of business. It's all your fault and your ship's fault.
Well, I really am very sorry to hear that this accident has caused the disruption it has to your businesses. And of course, I'm deeply saddened by the effect it's had on the wildlife of the area. However, it's not right that you should turn to the ship alone for responsibility for what has happened, because the ship was under the commercial management of Magna. It was under the command of an experienced state-licensed pilot and assisted by a tug as it went up the river. So I don't see exactly where it is that the responsibility lies with the ship itself. No one is discussing the damage that has been suffered by the ship. No one is discussing the loss of use. No one is discussing the consequences that we have suffered as ship owners from this incident.
You're just talking nonsense.
Sorry, you have to move.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Tsatsas. Julian Bray here from the Global Newswire. I've heard about this incident at your office this afternoon where you were confronted by these protesters over this pollution incident. Let me ask you, why are you refusing to stand up and take any action and help the communities that have been affected by this incident?
Well, that's not the case. The ship has gone ahead with its plans to contain the damage that has been caused as a result of the accident. It was not the ship's fault. the ship, as I explained to the pressure groups, was under the commercial management of Magna. I see no responsibility at this moment as far as the ship itself is concerned. I find that we're being bullied for accepting responsibility that is not our own. However, there is insurance in place, people will be indemnified, and however regrettable this accident is, it will be dealt with in the best possible way. No one seems to care about the damage to the ship, however.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Mr. Van Blanken, Julian Bray here.
Good afternoon.
I've just spoken to Mr. John Satsas, the owner of this the ship that you chartered, which is involved in this business. He's insisting it's absolutely none of his responsibility, that he's in fact out of pocket himself. He seems to be wanting to pass the blame to you. How do you react to that?
Oh, that is obviously not very handy of him. I mean, it's his ship that ran aground, so he should take his responsibilities. I mean, it's very simple, and what can I do about it? So actually, that's basically all I want to say about it. Thank you very much, Mr. Bray, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Well, you heard the discussion that Mr. Satz has had with the people representing the environmentalists and the locals. You may think he was perhaps somewhat tactless and very defensive, and the same really has carried on to the discussion between the press, as it were, and Mr. Satsas and Mr. Van Blanken. So at this point I'm going to ask you another question, which hopefully will come up on the screen. Should anyone involved in this incident apologise publicly for the accident and the pollution? Yes, no, or don't know? If you would like to vote now. No. Yes, well, that's interesting. Now, of course, I'm not sure BP would necessarily agree with that, but it shows that you all think that one should be straightforward and honest, which is excellent. Anyway, the press is now involved in this, as you'll see. You'll have heard the discussions, and they're having a real field day because they're going to attack not only the owners, one ship company, Liberian company, evading their responsibilities, etc., but also, of course, the charterers. Large multinational don't give a damn about people's livelihoods and pollution, etc. So it's obviously the in thing to bash large multinationals at the moment, and that's really what's going to happen. And the next scene is going to show you what the press are up to. Well, you might have thought some of those headlines are a bit extravagant, especially the one about the Tesco trolley, but it is the way in which the media are dealing with things these days, and it shows what can happen if you can't keep control of what the media and the press are saying. So both Mr. Satsas and Mr. Van Blanken have seen these reports, and of course neither of them comes out of it very well. They're being attacked personally as well as their various companies. So they have to talk to each other.
No, John, I think it was not very handy to say these things in front of these people. I mean, you know, they've got their own things going on, and you have to take responsibility for that.
And I've had my fill of this. We're having people outside our office screaming at the ship, and they refuse to look at the facts of the matter. We discussed this. We agreed to go upriver. You assumed responsibility for getting the ship to your terminal.
No, John, wait.
We had a pilot on board.
I just told you, John, I told you to go up that river because that's part of our contract. The ship should discharge, and you knew there was a deadline.
No. We discussed the matter extensively. We only agreed to instruct the master to proceed when you assumed responsibility for any consequences.
John. I never assumed responsibility. It's very simple, John.
We have it in writing. I mean, there is a definite agreement.
I've seen your emails, but I mean, I have never given you any guarantees. I mean, it's your master that went up the river, and if he doesn't think it is safe, he shouldn't do that.
The master was not involved. We had to
he was involved. He was on the bridge, my God.
If we didn't do what you said, we were damned on the off-hire. If we did, we were damned on the off-hire if we didn't. I mean, what is the responsibility of the ship here? The responsibility lay with you.
All the responsibilities on the ship, John. I mean, the ship went up the river. It was your master.
Our position was not to proceed and that the ship should wait downstream and lighten, etc. And you said, no, the ship has to proceed. And we got nowhere in all of this.
John, I totally disagree with you there.
Really,
I said to you should go up the river to discharge the ship.
Anymore.
Listen, John,
I have had enough of
your
this
responsibilities.
Let's leave it to our lawyers. It's just a waste of our time.
Thank you very much, John. Jesus.
Well, that was a very constructive discussion, wasn't it? But I think probably quite likely in a circumstance such as this, you must realize this is a very serious incident. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. And of course, passions will run high. So another question to be asked now, which will come up on the screen. In real life, and this will only apply to some of you, obviously. In fact, since there are a lot of lawyers here, it won't apply to very many people at all. Have you ever had to overrule a master in the face of commercial pressure or charterer's pressure? Yes or no? Yes, well, that's a pretty large majority. I'm not entirely surprised by that. Right. Now, what else will have to happen? We've seen that the owners and charterers have spoken again to their club. But, of course, what they will then have to do is speak again to their lawyers to see what progress has been made. And first, we're going to see the owners talking to their lawyers.
And I get the impression that the charterers are looking to blame us for this now. I thought we had enough with the Americans without having to fight each other. It's costing us a fortune. The question is, what are we going to do and how are we going to be in a position to recover some of these losses from the charterers?
Okay, well, I've had a look at that and I've looked also at the facts of the matter as best we have them at the moment, John, and the contract. Now, as you've seen from our preliminary factual report, one of the points is that there was a pilot on board.
Hold on, but under the charter, owners are not responsible for the actions of a pilot.
Well, you're absolutely right, but a key legal issue is going to be whether or not the port was safe for the ship. That involves investigating whether it was safe for the ship to get to the port, use the port, and leave the port at the relevant time. There's going to have to be an investigation of matters like the extent of dredging, the instructions that were given to the vessel, and the depth of water in the channel. If the port wasn't safe and that unsafety caused the loss, then the charterers are going to have to pay. This is a question of risk allocation, John. It's not a question of fault. It doesn't matter whether the charterers were at fault or not if they gave a strict warranty that the port would be safe.
Yeah, but the charterers are already giving interviews blaming the pilot and the master.
Yes, well, that's what we expected them to do. If the charterers can show that there was negligence on the part of the pilot or the master, that might be good for them. Practically though, there are three things that you've got to do. Firstly, I think we need to instruct a navigation expert who will be able to judge the reasonableness of the master's actions. Secondly, as I've already told you, John, we need to get really close to the facts. And thirdly, I would suggest that we find an ex-pilot, someone who knows this port really, really well, who can talk about whether there's been a history of accidents there before, and who knows about the systems and the way the harbour master interacts with the pilotage authority.
So it's your view that if we are successful in all of that, we'll recover everything from the charters?
Well, it's a bit early to say, but there are going to be a lot of claims here, John. We've obviously got the big ticket items, the environmental damage claims, any fines that are levied by the US. Then in addition to that, you've got your uninsured losses, then the damage to the ship, loss of use, and also your salvage liability.
Well, should I make the effort to get to the United States now? I'm being told I ought to prepare myself to talk to the media there.
Well, I mentioned to you before that you need to have an effective media response to this casualty. But media response is one thing, and there's also some practical questions here. I mean, for example, are you going to be arrested if you go to the States? You need to get top quality criminal law advice from a US criminal lawyer who will tell you whether or not you're going to get arrested.
Oh, that's just what I need right now. Anyway, thank you, Ian, and we'll talk again soon.
Well, the point that was made there about criminal responsibility is rather relevant to the charterers as well. Mr. Van Blanken and Magna are particularly worried about the potential damage to their reputation, not just civil, but also criminal. You heard people refer to criminal proceedings earlier. So Mr. Van Blanken also needs to continue to talk to his lawyers to talk about whether or not he can deal with preserving the reputation of Magna, whether he should be visiting America. So he will then speak again to his lawyers.
Hi Han, it's Hugh here. It's been a few days since we last spoke, and I just thought I'd give you a call for a catch-up. I just wondered where we are in relation to current matters, and in particular whether you've heard anything more about the cause of the grounding.
Well, we don't have any further news at the moment, but there is some speculation that there was insufficient depth of the water in the river. And also the local agents, in accordance with the advice of the harbour master, advised our captain that although there were some critical areas for navigation on the river, freshwater arrival draft of 30 foot, a vessel could proceed up to the buoy number 7 area, where she would have been lightened for discharge. And the problem, as it appears, is that the water levels in the river vary considerably from time to time. And the master is heavily relying on the knowledge of the local pilot for the navigation on the river.
Oh, right. Well, we've now had a chance to look at the charter party in more detail. And as you know, it's on the NYP 93 form. It contains the usual safe port, safe berth, always afloat or safely aground provisions. There is an additional provision which states that the vessel may discharge at a place to be directed by charterers, provided she can always lie safely afloat. Now, this seems to cover the present situation. Also, in the additional clauses, there is a slightly different safe port warranty provision, which refers to due diligence. Now, that's something I'm going to have to look at and come back to you on. And I also noticed that in the recap, the brokers just refer to safe port, safe berth. So basically, it looks as though it comes back to the usual subjective test that was laid down in the case of the Eastern City, whereby the port has to be safe for that particular vessel on that particular day, absent any negligence on the part of the master. Now, this is going to be of particular importance in this case because the master calculated the vessel's arrival draft at the mouth of the river, and he will have communicated this information to the pilot, which will have been a very important part of the vessel's navigation up the river. What I suggest we do is that we draw up a list of points to be considered by the local club correspondents and the local club surveyors. In particular, they should try and attend the US Coast Guard inquiry. They should also try and find out what depths in the river were promulgated by the local harbour master over the relevant period, and also try and ascertain when the river was last surveyed, and in particular in the area of buoy number 7. Is there anything else that you'd like to ask me, Han?
Oh yes, as a matter of fact I do, Some claimants showed up at the owner's office yesterday, and they confronted Mr. Tsatsas with demanding compensation for their losses, and I'm afraid he only made things worse by telling them that although he sympathized with them, but that it wasn't his fault, and that he, he also had suffered losses. Now you can imagine that that was a field day for the press. I mean, and that's affecting us as well. I mean, we're a big charter. Magna Carta is a worldwide company. Our share price is going down. Our board is not happy. There's all sorts of implications. So I need to do something, and I wonder whether I should go to the States or not.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Han, because I've already advised that you should retain a media consultant in the States, and I thought that had already been done. Since this is an incident in the States, I strongly recommend that you do not attend yourself. In fact, instead, I recommend that you send a PR consultant from New York to attend on site and to meet with the various parties. If you go, you will be seen as coming from Europe, making placatory noises and then returning to Europe, and that will be the end of it. It will only inflame matters. However, if you send someone locally, it will be seen as a commitment to the local interests, and he can listen to what they need and can be seen to be doing the best that he can. Well, I'll leave you to think about these things further, Han. In the meantime, I look forward to discussing them further with you at our next conference call at 1600 tomorrow afternoon.
So, owners and charterers have both had their further conversations with their lawyers. Again, nothing perhaps terribly surprising, considerable emphasis there on media consultant, the need of a media consultant, emphasis on the fact that it's probably not sensible for either owners or charterers representatives to go to America, worry about criminal proceedings and that sort of thing. Both the lawyers, of course, are getting into the facts now. The famous words about safe port come in, and the well-known case of the Eastern City, which is the leading case. Obviously, the facts need to be investigated, and that's one of the things we'll be trying to do this afternoon. From a point of view of public image, it's all gone about as badly as it could do. The impression is that the ship owner really doesn't really care very much about what's going on, apart from going to have a nice lunch. The charterers are worried about their reputation rather than the environment, so the whole thing is not looking particularly good. So that being the case, I think it's about time to have coffee. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being pretty prompt. You'll see when the lights go up that the stage has somewhat changed. And the whole purpose of the next session is a media interview, so to speak. We explained beforehand the case has attracted a great deal of publicity, and Magna Charta have a large London office. So accordingly, we've put together a sort of face-to-face type interview in which the owners and the charterers will be interviewed by Julian Bray. So this is intended to be, as it were, a live TV occasion, so perhaps you might applaud.
Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. This week it's the case of the Idle Star, the ship that ran aground and spilt more than 4,000 gallons of oil, ruining part of the fragile environment of the US Pacific West Coast. The cleanup will cost millions of dollars and the environment may never fully recover. Meanwhile, the owner of the ship and the owner of the cargo of sugar it was carrying continued to sit comfortably in their offices on the other side of the world, seemingly more concerned about arguing between themselves and helping clean up the disaster they've caused. The very survival of the rare marbled murrelet is in question. Dolphins and manatees are threatened, and the livelihoods of local fishermen, hoteliers and others have collapsed. It is an ecological and human crisis. Today we are joined by John Satsas of Minimus Marine, the ship's owner, and Han van Blanken from Magna Charterer, the trading firm that hired the ship. A little later, we'll be open to questions from the audience to put to these two gentlemen involved in this incident. But first of all, I'd like to ask them questions of my own. First of all, Mr. Van Blanken, why did your huge company, one of the biggest of its type in the world, choose to hire an aging 14-year-old ship from a very small ship owner who has just 3 ships, as I understand it, for a voyage which you knew had clear risks?
Well, John and I know each other already for 30 years. We have been doing business for 30 years, and you don't
really count,
do that.
Mr. Van Blanken, when people's livelihoods have been ruined and birds have been.
No, I mean, you don't hire ships and you don't do those things if you are not comfortable with the quality. So we were okay with that.
Why don't you use your own ships?
We don't have our own ships. We just.
Why don't you have your own ships? If you're carrying these cargoes, surely you should have your own ships and look after them yourself.
We're not ship owners. We like to keep the things where they are. We are charterers, and we have understandings of cargoes. And
it's been said this is simply a tactic by a trader like yourself, just to rent ships as cheaply as possible, regardless of the consequences.
Well, that's not our policy.
But this cargo was valued at about, say, $8 million, but you've rented this ship for an entire year for just $2 million.
Well, that's part of the business. I mean, it's a marketing thing.
But isn't it again just getting transport on the cheap?
No, that's not our business model. Sorry.
Well, not much freedom there. Mr. Satsas, you're the owner of the Idle Star, but many people may think this is just yet again, a case of the idle ship owner.
Not at all. What's your point?
Well, you're sitting here in London. Surely you should be in the US helping coordinate this cleanup.
I can't help the cleanup with my own hands. People have been instructed. The process is underway. Everything that can be done is being done. I don't see why my physical presence in the state would add anything to the issue.
But try telling that to some of the locals, some angry local campaigners whose businesses have been affected. They've travelled nearly 5,000 miles to confront you in London, just as I understand it, you were heading for lunch at your gentleman's club, where even a club sandwich costs £25. Is that the approach of a responsible ship owner or an idle ship owner?
No. Again, we raise the issue of what a ship owner is doing in his own private life. I see no relevance between the two.
This again is oil being spilt in the US West Coast. It's the Exxon Valdez all over again, isn't it?
No, in terms of extent, it's not the Exxon Valdez, but the issues are similar, and the approach to dealing with the problem.
So you're saying you haven't learned the lessons more than 20 years on, nearly 30 years on from Exxon Valdez?
What lesson is there to be learned?
I don't know. You tell me. You're the person who's the shipping expert.
Well, I mean, no one has complained as to the cleanup effort that is going on at the moment. The damage has been done as a result of what was an unforeseen accident in approaching a terminal that was up the river. I don't see where the owner's responsibility lies in that respect.
Mr. Van Blanken, your company has lost around $100 million in market value in the last 2 weeks due to this. Your investors clearly think you're responsible, so why aren't you taking more action to assist in the cleanup?
Well, like Mr. Satsas, we're taking all the action that we can. We have been dealing with our insurers, with our lawyers, and all sorts of other people's surveyors.
So your focus is on purely your own self-interest, your lawyers and your insurers, and doing absolutely nothing on the ground?
Well, that is something I leave to the experts. That's not my task.
So you're palming it off. But Mr. Van Blanken, you're facing a growing consumer boycott campaign against Magna in the US. You're a major name. Your products go into a lot of consumer products. It's your biggest market in the US. Your shareholders are angry and concerned too. What are you doing to compensate the local fishermen and hoteliers whose businesses are collapsing around you?
Well, I think that's not to us because we were the charter of the ship. We are not the owner, and that's up to the owner to deal with that.
So how long will they have to wait?
I don't know. I'm not an insurer. I'm sorry.
You should be ashamed. You should really be ashamed of yourself. You have destroyed the environment around us. We see dead fish everywhere with devastating effect on the environment. And what about the marbled murrelet? It's already endangered. It's feeding on the fish in the river, and you have destroyed the river, and you have destroyed the fish in the river, and now the small ones are dying. The local fishermen don't know how to get back to work again because you killed the fish in the river. It's a terrible situation, and I don't care how much it will cost to clean it up. You have to clean it up. And if you don't, we will absolutely make sure that we arrange a boycott against Magna. Thank you.
Well, as I told you, I mean, it's not for me to clean up.
Look, before you carry on, our hotels and restaurants are being put out of business. The visitors come all the way to see our beautiful wildlife and to go fishing. You know, they walk and they fish. It's a beautiful area, and it's being ruined at the moment. Thank you very much. 2 restaurants went out of business last week. Who's going to come and book in my hotel? Who wants to come and see men in hard hats and booms? They've closed off most of the nice places. What are you going to do about it?
Well, Mr. Van Blanken, how would you respond to those supposedly unscripted interventions?
Yes, well, Mr. Tsatsa has replied to this before, I think. I mean, you know, they've got all sorts of people attending the matter to the best of the possibilities. So what am I to do about it?
As emotions are clearly running very high in our audience, studio audience here tonight, there are some roving microphones. If any of the audience wishes to put a question or two to these two gentlemen, please. Yes, I see someone. A face, I believe, could be recognized.
Carol Kane from CNN. We in the United States, we take our shorelines very seriously. There have been discussions and people who are citizens of that area complaining about health risks. And here you two sit in London. Neither of you went to the United States and personally supervised the response to this absolute tragedy and disaster. How can you two men sleep at night? You have not you discharged your oil, but you have not discharged your responsibility.
Mr. Sutton,
if I may answer that, I have very little to add to the expertise of the people that have been engaged to deal with the accident. It was an accident. The state had its terminal up the river. There are risks involved in that, and as we see, those risks came home to roost. An accident has occurred. The only thing one can do is to try and restore it as best as one can to its previous state. It'll take time. We're very saddened by the damage to the wildlife that has suffered from this accident. There's not much more that can be done beyond what the experts on the spot are doing. The fact that there are hard hats and booms in the area is encouraging because it demonstrates that the cleanup is still going on.
And you mustn't forget, I'd like to add something to that. I agree with what you said, John. But the ship went up the river under full licensed pilotage and in accordance with all the regulations and rules of the Port Authority. So what can we do about it?
Are there any other questions from any other audience member would they like to put? And another one here.
Don't you think you gentlemen should say sorry at some stage? I have been sitting here for nearly half an hour during this program and nobody said sorry once.
The public speaks, gentlemen.
Well, the point is well made. I did say sorry for the consequences of what happened, but I can't say sorry for something for which my ship or my client's ship was not to blame.
Do you think saying sorry admits liability?
It may do, in certain circumstances.
Mr. Satsas, let me just put a few points to you. You're a ship owner who lives here in London and enjoys living here in London, I take it?
Yes.
You enjoy your club, your gentleman's club?
I do indeed, yes.
Yes, but your company is based in Greece, so your company is based in a
Marshall Islands, actually.
Marshall Islands, indeed. But but some of your operations are in Greece. Okay, so in the Marshall Islands, so it's London and the Marshall Islands.
The ship is in Marshall Islands.
Marshall Islands, but it's flagged in Liberia.
I apologise.
Oh, it is Liberia. Thank heavens for that. Yes, and there's the city of Monrovia on the ship's stern that we've seen in the pictures.
Yes.
And you have, looking these things up, I see you have an office in Broad Street, Monrovia.
We and another 1,000 people.
Yeah. Are you a regular visitor to your Broad Street office?
Not at all.
No. Have you ever been to your Broad Street office, Mr.
Absolutely not.
Have you ever had anything to do with your Liberian company, Mr.
Yes, I paid the annual fees.
The annual fees, but Mr. Satsas, there are those people who would say this is just purely a crude tax dodge, isn't it? You're just simply avoiding your responsibilities in another fashion to pay your due fees to society.
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
of course. This is a tax dodge.
No, I pay my dues to society, and the fact that these international regulations have led to flags of necessity and searches for a more favorable jurisdiction to run one's business are well known since Prohibition.
That is necessity rather than convenience, I take it.
Absolutely.
I see. Very, very convenient. Very convenient. Mr. Van Blanken, your company is a trader that's in fact well known to have a very poor environmental record. Frankly, there's the notorious case of the dumping of toxins in Africa a few years ago. Why is your company culture so poor, Mr. Van Blanken?
Well, I think what you're trying to tell us here is not correct. So I think you should refrain from this sort of allegations.
I think you'll, as you well know, there are many of these allegations have been made and have been,
yeah, but allegations can be made, but they have never been proved, and it's not the case. We are not dumping toxic.
Gentlemen, just moving on again. There is something I need to show you that in the last few days, this program has been past some email exchanges between the pair of you. These are private emails describing the interchanges before the ship ran aground. You are wanting to pose as being chums and friendly together, working together, but these emails, which you will be familiar with, are not that at all. You were arguing about whether this ship should go upriver, weren't you? Mr. Van Blanken?
We've had some exchanges, yes, but...
You were demanding this ship went upriver, didn't you, Mr. Van Blanken?
Well,
and Mr. Satsas didn't want to go up, but you had him under your thumb, didn't you?
No, I didn't have him under my thumb, and it's actually his captain that has the responsibility. If the captain doesn't think it's safe, he shouldn't go up the river. It's my commercial duty to make sure that the ship is going to discharge. So that's what I told to Mr. Satsas. And we might disagree on a few points here.
And Mr. Satsas, your master failed to produce a route plan that was
not at all. My master found himself in a situation where the harbour master, who is beholding to the terminal that is upriver, was saying one thing, the Pilots Association was saying another, but really these are matters that will be discussed and decided by our lawyers who are dealing with it. In our exchanges at the time...
Mr. Satsas, with due respect, you're in a TV studio and I'm asking the questions here and we have an audience who's wanting to listen to them. So
you have
if you would mind answering them on
there, which you will find is reasonably civilized, not at all at loggerheads. We're trying to solve a commercial problem and it didn't work out. But the fact is that that has nothing to do with getting the people all excited and media concerns, etc. There is a complete mismatch of the events as you've presented them.
You seem to be wanting to put words into people's mouths who are very angry at the moment, and they, as we've seen expressed tonight, they are very angry. But you had the within your power to be able to stop this ship going up river
yes,
at a time when it was known to you it was a dangerous, potentially dangerous voyage.
I'm on record to state that what the ship struck was not chartered on the maps. It was in the hands of a professional state-licensed pilot. It was assisted by tugs. Short of just picking the ship up and taking it to the terminal, I don't see what else there was for us to do. But as I said, the media has picked up on this. They see an opportunity to create a discussion and throw things out of all proportion, dealing with matters that they have little knowledge about, and we're sitting here being subjected to.
So you're simply wanting to shoot the messenger as.
No, I don't see the media as a messenger. I see the media as someone who's stirring it all up. And I've had enough of it.
Yeah, you mustn't forget you're blaming us here, but I mean, how about the local authorities that perhaps did something wrong with taking the ship up the river whilst the situation was not good enough to do that?
But Mr. Van Blanken, your share price is going down, your shareholders are angry, but you're not fighting to save the environment, are you? You're fighting to save your job.
No, we are also assisting Mr. Tsatsas and see what we can do. I mean, both our lawyers and insurance companies are talking with each other.
This is your job and career, isn't it, Mr. Van Blanken, you're fighting to save? You're not thinking about the communities that have been damaged?
Look, I mean, this whole discussion, I totally agree with Mr. Tsatsas, is getting now very personal, and I don't think this is the right way to approach these things.
That is your decision.
It's my decision, and actually I think I've had enough of this sort of silly discussion, because you're distracting things from the right things, and we have been trying our best.
You're actually stirring up the public.
I'm fed up with this whole story, so thank you very much, Mr. Bay. Have a nice day.
I agree with you. It's counterproductive what is going on here. It's simply to sell papers. Enough.
Well, I think the actions of these two gentlemen have spoken louder than anything I could say, so thank you indeed for watching, and good night.
Well, I found that entertaining. I hope you did. And it's not entirely unrealistic, I think, either. But you may remember at the beginning I said that I was going to ask you to vote again on question 1, and now this time has arisen. Now, could you bear in mind the competing issues you've heard about from owners and charterers, and the various sort of factual things you've heard as well? And the question which will come up here is question 1, I hope. Would you have allowed a ship of yours to proceed to the discharge area in these circumstances, yes or no? Let's see what that comes out with. That's a complete change from the beginning, which is interesting. In the beginning it was almost 50-50, and now you've gone to 2/3 no, effectively 1/3 yes. So obviously you have been affected by what you've heard this morning, and you've been listening, which is even better. So that's very interesting. So anyway, now is time for sort of summing up, if that's the right way of putting it. And my job and that of Jeremy here is to, Julian, is to explain how the parties have acted and reacted in response to the incident, and Julian's going to go first.
Thanks, thanks, Lindsay. Just a few comments, and I'll say that's enough of the slapstick as well, because I think we've tried to sort of put a bit of life into this scenario. And I should just stress that this wasn't intended to be some dreadful am-dram. It was very much a setup of this afternoon's arbitration, which is the critical thing. And I must compliment Lindsay for having conjured up a very clever scenario, which has plenty of issues for the arbitration to pull at, and plenty of loose angles. In some ways, it was a very simple voyage with a mundane cargo going to another port. But the way things turned out, it all went awry, as of course people in shipping appreciate. The media's role in this is, as you all know, sophisticated types being in London can be very, very influential in the trajectory of the legal issues which underlie such things. You've just got to think of not only of Exxon Valdez many, many years ago, but the likes of the Deepwater Horizon follow-up, where the media has played the impact of reporting has played a huge role. And then, of course, there's the wild card these days of the impact of new social media alongside traditional media. Just a few thoughts on how the two sides theoretically sort of handled this. First of all, poor old John Satsas and his minimus remain, minimus by name, minimus by nature, clearly. He successfully did make a drama out of a crisis. He was effectively allowed to spin out of control. The farce of going to lunch at his London club was fairly spectacular. I just picked up this copy of the FT to bring out here because I thought actually just live today over the weekend there was a very good example of the way somebody's handled that, and it's Beardy himself. Branson, he's on the front page of the FT, big features here. He's not everybody's cup of tea. He's not my cup of tea, frankly. His businesses have a very patchy track record over many years. But he by personal engagement and very, very clever crisis management, manages to turn the situation. Yes, tough questions are being asked about Spaceship Two and the whole Virgin traveller approach, but the impact that he has on turning that from turning media's attention away is very, very well crafted and highly skilled. John clearly, lacked any empathy or any sympathy with the victims, the local victims, let alone the poor marble muralettes that. As an ornithologist myself, I do find that particularly painful. Han, of course, he was using the big the boilerplate of being the big charterer. Although they were too lacking in a media response, he used his sort of flat black approach to hide behind things. It shows that still, even in larger companies, you do need to have strategies. The lessons, if there are any to be drawn from this at this stage, and this isn't the time for a communications primer. I'm sure most of you will know more than I know about this sort of thing. But clearly shipping is about managing risk, and alongside all the technical and financial risks and operational risks that you will face, there's the issue of reputational risk, and crisis planning and crisis management, and having plans in place is utterly vital, because as Lindsay said at the outset, this case is based around, it's a melange of various real cases that he's been involved in, one in particular, and that did involve a $26 million claim over the fate of the marbled murrelet, and I'd suggested to you that people in this room do not want to be on the other side of that law case if it comes along, so crisis management and media management as part of that is absolutely vital. So thank you.
Thank you, Julian. My role is to summarise very briefly what has been going on from a legal perspective. I can be very short because I think a lot of it's self-evident. What do you do in such situations? You have to know about the facts as much as possible. You have to hire professionals as soon as you can, lawyers, clean-up experts, media advisors. This started with a call in the middle of the night to John Satsas. A minor incident has now led to a major contractual and environmental disaster. Owners and charterers start out as old friends, end up in effect not on speaking terms. Now, you might think that's not surprising. If $50 million claims come along, people stop being friends quite quickly. Now, we've spoken to the club, we've spoken to the Classification Society, we've spoken to hull underwriters, and there's been some discussion about the charter situation, safe ports, some discussion about the cargo situation, in the fact the charterers have the cargo, they own the cargo, they're keen to have it discharged, so there's been some discussion about that. This will become much more clear, I hope, in the afternoon. As Julian said, this is actually two cases made into one, so the facts are all accurate, at least relatively accurate, and it just shows you what you can do about all this. Now, we've just been about the media. Julian's spoken about the media. I don't really have to say anything more. He's dealt with this very capably. You do need a media consultant on both sides as quickly as possible. And I think one clear point here is that you should not say, I would like my life back. Anyway, I hope this has proved a useful discussion as to how to deal with this sort of situation. It was interesting with the question number 1 about would you have allowed the ship to go up to this place has changed completely from when you first came in to when you voted on it just recently, which I said is interesting and does show the value of being able to do these sorts of things. Now, obviously, from the perspective of the dispute between the owners and the charterers, there's going to be no settlement. So the claims will be referred to arbitration. So thank you very much.